content, I recommend skipping 3 minutes in. That seems to be somewhere 3 to 5 minutes when the actual conversation kicks in, because people don't show up immediately. And then if I start too early, they might ask, what were we talking about? And then I rewind. So I thought I'd start off by letting you know that I had a beautiful lunch whilst writing my next mathematics paper. And my supervisor presented our second paper, the last one, at a international mathematics conference in Canada. And it was fascinating. There were a lot of questions because that paper it's proving to be more significant than what we initially anticipated. So it's been fascinating to see the questions that it has extracted from the maths community. So I had lunch, 2 boiled eggs, some raw veggies, carrots, capsicum, olives, and now an almond milk vanilla latte. So cheers, here we are, 1 minute in, 2 minutes to go, and we will start with our conversation. G'day. I drank that a bit too quick. Woo! That's one way to have a coffee. So I've noticed that once one gets older, that patterns change in such a way that there's 2 different patterns happening. One is cyclical and one is more linear but modifies the cyclical pattern. So the same type of things, identity, meaning, what things mean, what events mean to you, you still go through them again in your mind, but getting older changes how they look to your mind. So let's talk about the coffee, which we did, and now we talk about the murder. So the murder was a terrorist attack which murdered my father's sister and her husband and my 2 cousins, age 4 and 6. Now, this happened before I was born. So when it first happened, the tragedy was devastating and an absolute disaster. I know that, for example, when my father went to the airport waiting for them to arrive home, after he knew they weren't coming back, he kept going to the airport every day. Boss Briggs, 3 times in a row. So the tragedy was not only that of siblings dealing with a victim of a terrorist attack, but the father having lost the eldest daughter who had a status, maybe after death, I don't know, of being the most successful and most beautiful one out of the lot. But maybe that's what happens after death, one gets elevated in that way. And so every Christmas, every Easter, both Catholic Easter, Orthodox Easter, because of the mix of our Semitic families, we would celebrate and honor her memory and the memory of the cousins I never met. Now, what's actually happened is that all of those people who would honor her, being her siblings, have been dying one by one. So we started with Johnny Blue Eyes, about whom you know, in a tragic accident a few years ago. And then we lost Uncle Johnny Blue Eyes' wife, and then pretty boy Henry died, and then another sister unfortunately entered the phase of debilitating disease that comes with age, and now the last sister, apart from my father's the last healthy one, touch wood, but the last sister now, who was extremely strong, robust, gardening, working, 15 hours a day non-stop, is now unfortunately entering that age where things start to break down. And so the murder is now accompanied many years later by the natural death of everyone who was a victim of losing their sibling in that murder. And now I can't see that murder on its own anymore. I now see it as part of the inevitable death of every generation that is around, that makes life or give it its meaning and results in the history of humanity for subsequent generations. And then I wonder now, was her murder as much of a tragedy in the sense that the rest of the siblings are now meeting fates of natural death, which are sometimes worse. And of course, time was cut short for one. But now we've reached a point where we can understand that the auntie that was murdered would now possibly be either dead, dying, or in some sort of debilitated state if she was still alive today. And so, what would have been better? Good evening, Terry Nee. Pleasure to see you. Now, I'm not saying one is better than the other. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm not saying it's better to be murdered than die naturally. Heaven forbid. I'm not saying anything like that. What I'm saying is that the perspective changes, because when you think of that murder, you no longer think of it in isolation. You now think of it as the premature death of a group of siblings who were all dying in various ways, aging, the effects of aging have on those people. And the deaths are very slow. And if you imagine the Grim Reaper doing this, then they are torturous. You have people going through crazy states of advanced diseases and illnesses and immense suffering. And it makes you, of course, realize that the initial murder was one version of the suffering that is almost inevitable for everybody. So then we wonder, well, if that's the case, then we appreciate what we have, and it makes smaller things seem much less relevant. And perhaps that is why, as one gets older, they mellow slightly. Not everyone, of course, but it definitely changes things. Dementia is the slowest goodbye. Yeah, absolutely. So we all know someone now who's going through that. Hence why the majority of my viewers are over the age of 35. Most of history didn't have time to contemplate death and murder, says Terry Nee. True. So that's actually, it's so funny you say that, because before I just got on to do this video, I was just thinking that now that my auntie's murder is now one of the millions or hundreds of thousands of murders that we read about and that we don't even know happened over the years. You can't then, well, I found that I can't remain in some sort of victim mentality in this particular case. I'm not saying this applies to everybody or in every situation, but in this case, I couldn't feel sorry for myself anymore for losing my auntie before having met her and my cousins, because it's sort of now, it made me realize that, well, if I'm going to feel that way about her, then everyone should feel that way about every other murder that's happened. And maybe they should, but it gave me some context in that it's not that we are a special case, it's that life is actually quite horrible, and the good that you find in it needs to be cherished. Terry Nee says he's hoping for dementia just to get out of chores. I love it. See, that's one of the invariants over time. 10 years ago, Terry Nee's humor was as sharp as it is today. That's how I know that you are nowhere near dementia, my friend. All right, well, I'm going to love you and leave you. It's been 9 minutes. I'm going to finish this coffee and get back to finishing my paper. And cheers. As always, just take life one smack at a time. What can you do?